And I teach 8th grade math.
I'm David Coronado, 7th grade math.
Richard Jones, I teach algebra and 8th grade math.
Alicia Leon, 7th grade math.
So we want to focus on our middle school math and how it's a little bit different than just sitting and taking notes and this is how you do it and follow this pattern. There's definitely a time and place for that, but not as much as an everyday idea. I started with this little quote up here. Math is not so much about teaching you how to think about a problem as it is about giving you an opportunity to think and explore a problem. This is different than how I was taught math, because I was taught from a person in the front of the room. This is how you think about this kind of problem. In a very strategic way, and memorizing all, when I see this and I recognize this, I follow that idea. It worked, but it's not working for our kids anymore. It's just not how they think, that's not how they learn. And they really just want to think their own way before you start changing it. So this idea is great, and it gives them to opportunity to think and explore on their own, honoring what they're thinking, their own problem solving, while at the same time being there to guide them to what you're trying to do, to guide them into that algebra mindset, that ratio mindset, whatever that standard's really after. When I talk about why it's different, I'm going to reference the testing world. Like in ELA, the question used to be, from this passage, what is the character like? And you would say, angry. So now you would answer, angry, but then it's going to back it up with, how do you know the character's angry? Why did you say the character was angry? Go back to the text and tell me why you said the character was angry. And our kids at some point are like, he's angry, like I just know it. But now we have to prove why you know it. So in the math world, the same thing. I mean, the answer is one thing, and I still do care about that, but now we got to look at the process, the actual equation, because sometimes on these tests, they don't even want the answer. What equation would you use to solve this? What missing piece of this equation would you put in? I made a mistake with this equation. Can you find it? It's really, do you know what you're talking about? And our tests are not so much more multiple choice anymore. You can't just guess anymore. And that's a little scary, because if you have nothing, and that little cursor's blinking at you to type something in, that's really like a defeating feeling. I have nothing, I just gotta move to the next. I can't even click C and move on. So I just want to demonstrate how we would put together maybe a problem in our 8th grade world, 7th, 8th grade world, giving the children an opportunity to explore that, to put together their ideas, and then turn that into some kind of presentation, whether it be on paper, to the class, to a small group, some idea. I'm going to start with a little video here. And your job during that video on your whiteboard with that little marker is to jot down what you see. Some observations, some facts obviously. You're probably going to be doing math with some of these ideas. So thinking about numbers, thinking about things you see that you might want to work with. And think about maybe what question we will want to ask you based on this information and all of that. Right now we're going to keep those ideas to yourself, whatever you come up with, and then we'll have an opportunity to break out and share those with each other. This, I think we'll be able to see it just fine. Okay, if you can't see something, just write what you think. You'll have an opportunity to check in with other people. Normally as a class, we will watch this a couple of times if we needed to. All right. Thinking about those ideas, anybody want to offer an idea to what question do you think we're going to ask you? Right?
Like how many squares are going to take?
Beautiful. How many squares is it going to take to cover this cabinet? And I would say, what do you mean by cabinet? Do you mean this side? Do you mean all sides? Do you mean front, back, just two? Top, bottom? What are we talking about here? But I like where you're going. How many of these little square ideas is it going to take to cover the cabinet? Awesome. Let's go ahead, and we have enough people to do 2 little tables, and bring our ideas to a big paper here.
There we go. Yeah, let's get 1, 2, 3. We'll get you guys looking on this.
I'm gonna get those popsicle
And then
sticks.
you guys be a group of 2.
Hold your name.
Okay. Group of 2, we'll get you guys over here.
Uh-huh. Marker.
Fistful here.
It's gonna be a little scary. Talk to people you don't know. Kids do this all the time. What did you see?
But I couldn't, because of my glasses, I could not actually see, I'll have to go closer to see the lines.
It was just 1
Yeah,
through 12.
yeah, or-
Now you got peers where you can communicate this.
What, numbers?
Yeah, because I could.
Oh, I could see
Get
the
that
first
learning
one.
from you.
We're working together. All right, so yes, if you got the 12.
So this is gonna be like our team brainstorm paper. So let's do our given information. So let's start jotting down what we know from our video.
Oh,
As I compile one list.
okay. We can start with your givens. What do you know? What do you know? What do we, what's been given to you? Part of our
In
video?
other words, what information did you get?
There we go. There's a given. We're using Post-it notes. So just,
Okay.
okay, so let's write that down
Things
somewhere.
that we don't know yet. But what do you know right now?
Just one person.
Just one person. Should be your designated.
Okay, I'll let you jot that down. Any color you want.
We know that 12
There we go.
goes
So
across,
it takes
right?
12 to go
But
across.
I don't know the dimensions, so I'm.
Correct.
We have
So it's got that in there.
Yeah.
Well, let's not assume yet, because we will
We
get
know
that
about
information.
one through 12.
But
Where
I'm
is
glad that
one?
you got that question kind of rolling around.
the first
a little bit.
Thank you. Let's label it. Let's make sure you organize.
12 Post-its, there we go.
Post-its or units.
Stickies or, yeah,
we
units.
have 4 rows and have 4 rows, right?
As your student does, it's so easy to jump to, well, I need to know yeah, I know, and that's the next step. But what do you know right now? And as you're thinking, yeah, what are you going to need to know to get to that answer? So let's sort out, what do you officially know as a fact? And I think most of us agree we've got 12 Post-its going across.
Right.
Right? All right, cool. And then what kinds of things are you thinking like, I need to know, or I need to ask, or I need to research here to find this out? I heard you were saying something over here in the red.
Do you want to repeat that again, what you said, what that we need to know?
What were the dimensions of the sticky notes?
There we go.
Yeah, the dimensions of our sticky note.
And how many sides we're going to cover.
Yeah,
There we go.
what about our cabinet here?
Does it show the other side?
The other sides of our cabinet here.
What, are you going to do the top and the bottom?
Yes, perfect.
Wouldn't that be hard to No.
I guess start at the top.
Make sure I don't reveal the answers here too soon. Alright, so here, instead of making you guess and sing and dance you through that, I'll give you some of our information that we need. So this cabinet in question, this marker is a little off from our normal sort of is 72 inches high. So we'll be getting those other dimensions here in a moment, but right now our front of the cabinet is 72 inches high. And I will say that we're going to cover all of the sides, including the top, but not the bottom, because it'd be too heavy to get under there.
Well, if we're to the top, we can assume the bottom. And double
Got
it.
our height of 72 inches? You jotted that down? Yeah, I hope so. We're
What
moving.
did you just say?
He said,
And then, yeah, and then everybody said, wait,
it's the same
wait,
thing.
wait, wait.
We got, wait a minute.
Go back. All right, I got a 36 inches in width. Are these the sides that you saw in the video?
No.
No.
Back.
Yeah. Let me get over here. All right, to our last one. The depth. 18 inches. How many Post-its does it take to cover 18 inches? Isn't it 12? Isn't that the side we saw?
I can't remember if it was the back or the side.
It's the small one, it was that one.
I think
I
that's
think it was the back.
Can we watch the original, Mr. Murin?
Yes, let's do it.
We didn't have a handle on the first.
Let's
The
do
back
it.
was
Do
no
it.
handle,
There we
so
go.
there's no
Yeah,
handle.
let's take it back.
It's the back.
Oh, there we go. Maybe it started too soon. There's our sticky or
It's
marker.
not going to be enough Post-its.
Oh yeah, he's on
They
the
showed
front.
him on the door, but then it changes.
So I guess we can assume.
Yeah, that is.
Okay, you're right, it does change. I'm sorry, I confused you, but then it
there's no
changes.
handle, yeah.
Okay, so it tricked us. I'm sorry, that's an unfair question. But it looks like this side that we're looking at the back.
Yeah,
It's the back.
it's got-
At the back, yep, looks like the back here. All right, good clarification. Yep. Anybody know how big a post-it is? How big?
3 by 3.
Yes, you're so good. And if you didn't know, well, then here's a resource for you. Because, you know, math is real life, and we're not just making this stuff up here. But it is a 3 by 3
What does it say,
idea
how many?
post-it.
Does it say how many sticky notes we got, or how many are in a?
You have an unlimited supply.
Oh, okay, so we don't.
Yeah, we want you to get to an
Let's
answer.
grab the
That's too easy.
portions
I ain't got
that
enough.
we have onto our final product once we have them.
Oh, this?
Yeah,
Where
this
do we go from
information,
here?
because
Now
this
that we have
information is
our
going to be
dimensions.
for all of us.
We divide these.
Whereas what's on your
into
board is for you.
3
Okay.
to see how many.
Now, as a class, you can imagine how confusing it gets because all of us are bringing our own thinking to this. I mean, even I'm like front, back, side. All right, so let's come together. So we got the back. We agreed on the back, and that was 12 post-its across?
Mm-hmm.
Yes? And a post-it is 3 inches.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's 12 of them, then how many inches is that? 36 inches, which is said and confirmed. Okay, that's good. What's the height of our cabinet?
72.
72. You're going to cover that in post-its as well. I'm covering the whole thing in post-its. We've got our back, which is going to match the front. And then we have our sides, and we have our top. You can measure in post-its. You can measure in inches. At some point, though, I want to try to come up with how many post-its this is going
Because
to
we
be.
get out the cell phone. For the calculator.
Yes, you can use your calculator if you need to. Whip it out. Let's do it. Don't go on Snapchat, though.
Let me get you some washable.
That's the final answer? So, could you walk me through, or walk both of us through, how did you get 800?
Because 3 each, so we need 12 times 14 post-its.
Wait, 14 post-its?
24.
Oh, okay.
24 input now.
Yeah.
And then
Let's
the
see, show
third
you
is
beautiful.
6.
Let's see how you guys are thinking. So 24 like
we
that,
have like a
and then
20,
12 like
80
that,
each.
so it's 24,
Each.
24 rows though,
And this
right?
is like
12
144
times?
each, but 2 sides
Right,
each.
we need
So it's like
24
1
rows,
times
yeah,
2.
times
24.
12, yeah.
Okay, so
Well,
this
because
is
we did
288
17
what? What's your
divided
units
by
on this?
3-inch post-it.
Okay, how many
Mhm.
rows will we
And
have?
then,
24.
so that's for the front.
Yeah, but then you
you're
have to
gonna
do
take it times
24
two
times
for the, so then let's
12,
list that front and back.
Right, that's why.
To get the full amount of this, right?
And
Which-
then-
which
so
side?
then the top
To
two
the-
rows
the-
here.
This
either
is
the back or the
side.
front.
It's 12 times 3 is 36.
So that's the front,
24
times 12 is 288. 288 for the front, 288 for the back.
So you did the front and the back. I'm just trying to see
Okay,
because
and
the
then
labels.
the
So
side.
you did the front and the back, and you did the 2 left and right, right?
So it's
And
18.
then-
Sides and 2.
Are you doing the top, or are we not doing the top?
Oh, you need a.
Oh, wait, 18. Or are you doing the depth first? Yeah, okay, so 18, so
You
that's
could, well, we could
The
do
top
that.
we-
Double
six,
it.
right? And that's 6 times 3.
The depth?
20.
So
But we
20
don't
times
know how
20.
many it's gonna be across though.
No, that's
Well,
Would it help
we
if we
do, because
drew a
we
picture?
have the depth of 18.
Would it
Oh,
help?
we could take
So we
that
can
divided
do
by,
that.
yeah.
Will the final
So
count?
that would be 6 times 24? Yeah, but don't we have to take this because, well, no, we have to use the width because,
Let me make a suggestion. Just throw it out there. You don't have to change your route in thinking. But if you do want to try something, a lot of us are measuring in post-its, like 3 inches. What if you measured by the area of a post-it? How much space does that entire post-it take up as area? 9 inches squared, because the 3 by 3, right? So 9 inches squared. So then how much area is the cabinet that you would then have to divide by 9? So maybe thinking in terms of area, space to cover rather than.
Well, that's why we count on our peers to help us out with that. So you hope so.
So if you've got a 72 by a 36, let's get the area of that.
You're working on the deck of the side.
900.
Figure how much, how many?
6. It will be 6.
So I don't know how to write in English. Like this, I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's 6 like this, and then like
Like
this, it will
like
be
this.
the
I don't know what
24.
Oh, you're okay. So I see. You're answering two things: post-its versus area.
Right.
Got to see. Got those labels. Good. Having these math conversations.
Like if I just walk in this class and I was just a stranger, and I came in here and I said, "Oh, let me see what you're doing here," and I picked up your work. Do you think I would be able to tell where you started and where you finished?
So this is one side, and then you have.
If I understand that.
Okay.
Well, I
You
don't.
also have the top.
So is there a way that we can organize this so that,
Do we need the bottom?
and we'll do that on here, this is our final copy.
Determine that.
Is there a way we can organize this so that way even she could explain it to us? You're the one that solved it.
Here's a
but
checkpoint
it's
for
good
you,
to
just
explain
to
it.
see if you're on the right track. It doesn't reveal the final answer,
For 18.
but just to let you know if you're headed in the right direction.
Or put it on here.
Like this.
That's a math
Or no.
teacher
Or
doing the
just
video.
put maybe.
Okay, that's a related video.
So that pull back, if you got there, was 288 post-its.
Okay, what about the?
Thinking
So
about
yeah, let's put
labels.
the measurements right here
We
of
got
it,
that one. So
whether it's in
we need
post-its
to do
or it's in
the
inches, or we can do both.
This is the
Because this is the width of the.
We still have to figure the width, right?
So we need to divide
we
it.
don't do that.
So yeah, let's
What
put
is the
72
width?
inches then, and then
Yeah,
maybe.
we can write that.
Oh yeah, it's
You said
sticky
for the
right here.
front and for the back. Okay. And then we use this one for the
Help with the
side.
yards.
Now we need to do that top.
Yeah, so that was
And it would
72 inches,
be
I think,
18.
and then what was the depth? How far back did it go?
So 6.
The depth was 18.
18. So let's get 18 inches up there on the
Right.
section right here.
So it's
And then the
top
length
is
of it was
36
what?
with 18.
18.
Right?
70.
Yeah.
Well, that was the height, I
Yeah.
think.
Uh-huh.
That was
Oh,
about
36.
36, there we go.
So it
So let's get
would be-
36 up top there, you can reach that. I know it's all sticky, so.
Say
Why don't we
36.
draw it like
Good.
three-dimensionally
Now,
without-
in a different color, why don't we say, well, how many stickies is this going to be? How many stickies is this going to
Labels
be?
or
How many
sides.
stickies is that going to
So
be? So you did the math for that, right?
Right.
Like make it
So
down
how many
like
stickies are we going up and down?
24,
24? So let's write 24 stickies.
9,
Oh, let me get you a better one. There you go.
thank
9,
you. So
and 12.
7, 4,
I mean, 6 and 12.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, 'cause that would be
Yeah.
32 by 2.
Would
No,
be
6
the
here,
top.
yeah, and 12.
And then we have to add all of these.
You know
See
what?
how much
Maybe. And that's okay, that's okay.
And 12 is
You're
here.
at
Yes.
72.
12 stickies.
Because it was 6 on the tip and 12 on the one. Right? So it's 12
Yeah, because you divided each one by.
By
what?
3.
Yeah,
By
there you
3.
go.
So
Yeah,
12
there's
times 6 is 72.
It's fair enough. Sounds
Well,
good.
I mean, you guys label it though.
These ones are worthy there.
Alright, so these
Well, you know what? I've
Yeah.
noticed the
So
green
let's go ahead and move on to the next
expos
thing.
always go away.
Yeah?
Yeah, all the colors of the
Question
purple, pink, light
are we
blue,
trying to
the
answer?
green ones always.
So then we
First
have
question
to
that we're
add all of these.
How many,
How many posted is needed to cover the whole area of the campus?
Including the bottom?
Yeah.
Including the bottom?
no, not the bottom.
Not the bottom.
No.
Okay, so let's
But
write
if you're
that
adding-
excluding the bottom.
Okay,
So if
I
you
don't
guys
know.
write that-
I didn't add.
So that's all the sports that we need. But then to change
Oh,
that
that's
to
amazing,
area,
but I don't know.
that's a different thing.
Well, yeah, and that'd be a different conversation, but the question was how many post-its would it take? You're okay.
To cover what?
Like your answer.
To cover,
Live in your visuals.
to cover, what was everything?
What would you have to multiply by?
Everything.
Everything?
Dimensions.
So in the bottom,
Including the bottom, is that what you want to do? No, if you want to do that, we can do that.
because it sees everything, that's why. Because we say like it means everything, it means like everything, like a square, like square, everything. Like
Yeah.
4, 6.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. These are so
To
cute.
cover all sides.
Yes. So we're going to go ahead and include the bottom on this one.
All right, my friends, I'm going to look at our answer. And what I want you to think about with this experience is the conversation that was coming up, both between you as students and us as the teacher, the different routes and methods of thinking that we're all brainstorming, scribbling down, and the idea of like, you're not sure what to do, well maybe this idea helped you, or maybe this idea helped you, or the way she drew it helped you, but something's working here. Sometimes we leave this as an as-is thing, and other times I would have you take this home and now sit down and organize it. Because one thing is to process it with the group, but the next thing is to go home and be like, okay, wait, what? The post-its and the area? But then that brings in that independent idea and helps us see how much are you getting from other people, and then are you actually internalizing that? There is one little spot we didn't account for, which is a handle, but you'll see that show up on the answer. So let me get that to you. But I love everything you were doing. And kids like this too, because it has a final answer. It's planned out, and we're going to see if we can match what's there.
If we can handle it.
Right?
Handle.
Because he kept going.
He kept going. So the handle here, it's going to ruin that row and only give us 11 instead of 12. But it only, or whatever that row, I think it's 12, yeah. It only ruins one of them though. Some of you got to the top. How many should we be getting to? 936 missed in the one for the handle. 930. And then there's an extension to this idea of like those foil pranks covering a whole cubicle or office in foil. And the idea would be like, how much foil would that take? How much would it cost? But the idea of like math being such a real world topic, like a post-it and a cabinet. It doesn't have to be weird buying 48 watermelons that nobody would do. And we can find this answer, even though we don't have that actual cabinet here or that actual post-it here. The idea of brainstorming, problem solving, come together and sharing those ideas, and hopefully being able to internalize something from that. What questions do you have about 7th and 8th grade math? Yeah.
Well, how often do you do this type of problem?
That is
do
a
it
great
daily?
Not to this extent. I would like my openers at the beginning of class to be a conversation starter, but usually then have to shift those conversations into more of a direct, because you still have to learn some new stuff. In an 8th grade world, I try to teach new stuff Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then take those new things into a camera-ready problem-solving idea on Monday. So that way the stuff that you're learning in those lessons does come to some kind of purpose. So recently we've been working on things like scientific notation. So the lessons are kind of derived as really just the rules of set it up this way and follow the exponents this way, which you gotta learn. But then when Monday came around, we were able to talk about space numbers that were super, super large, or virus numbers that were super, super small under a microscope, and now actually have a purpose as to why we learned those rules, why we needed to divide, and now we can talk about how many viruses live on a dime, or how many quarters it takes to travel to the moon, and how much money that would be, and putting it into a real world context. But I would say that's one of the challenges with our math right now, is trying to balance how do you teach them facts, but then also teach them how to problem solve. Back in the day, I've been teaching long enough to say that now, in the Ames world, when everything was multiple choice, it was more about facts, and it was more about fluency, and it was more about just memorize those rules, let's do it, subtract, add, subtract, do it. But now it's like, why does this work, and explain why you can add the exponents versus subtract them. And it's harder. It's harder to definitely get that across, but better in the long run.
And now the homework, though, I'm assuming in 7th grade is all in the book. And so those problems, it would be, it seems like it goes pretty fast. Those chapters in that homework.
Yeah.
They go really fast.
And I would say those are like the conditioning days of like the practice. Like, here's those skills that are going to come up on that word problem. And that's what I tell students is like, at least when you come to the word problem, it's not completely crazy to you, because it's got to be related to something we just talked about recently. Like, have we recently done square root? Have we recently done an exponent? Like, it's got to live in that world. I would love to get to the point where we're just throwing a random problem at them like we did tonight. With them, technically, we would be working with 3D figures, and we would be thinking about surface area and having those conversations about area and perimeter and the difference between inches or inches squared. So they have a little bit more context to work with more recently. But at some point, usually after testing, I love to throw those random problems at them and say, now at this point in the year, can you take anything?
Question unless somebody else does. Now, do you have time within the classroom to do small group instruction for kids that just aren't getting it?
Yeah. So we have started this new thing this year. We do differentiated instruction days. So based on some data, we're able to get the group kids usually in 3 groups, high, medium, and low, for an extension, refinement of skills, or really just back to the basics of what's going on. It's happening about once a quarter in 8th grade math, maybe about twice a quarter in 7th grade math. As we get more comfortable with that process heading into years forward, I think we'll get better at that idea. So in the classroom, I know kids usually sit in groups in all of our rooms. We usually build in time where they're working on something as a group and then having part of those discussions and bouncing around. But part of it is on their end too. Because there's a lot of kids that scream for help, and we're like, okay. There's a lot of
There's about how many in each class?
40% of our kids do what we need them to do every single day.
Okay, but I mean, as far as numbers, how many students are in your class?
About 35.
Okay, then that's a lot.
Yeah, so about 11 of them do exactly what they're supposed to do. 19 of them are side times. They go back and forth. I did my homework today, but I'm not going to do it tomorrow. I didn't have it yesterday. So I kind of know the stuff, and I kind of don't. And then there's 2 kids that have never done anything that written their name on a paper. They've got some more serious issues now we're working with. But the majority of our kids are in 54%. Those 19 kids that, I mean, they have true intentions. Like, I wanted to do it, but I didn't. And now math is one of those things, it's like, got to do it every day to build on those skills. And I mean, imagine if you worked on this in class and you didn't look at it when you got home, and then 3 days later you're trying to remember what these post-its and what you're talking about. It just doesn't work as well that way.
So you give them homework every day?
Mm-hmm. The homework has definitely gotten less because as a teacher I have to think of, well, what's the purpose of the homework? And it's not that idea of you're going to spend all this thinking time at home on it. The homework in math is more like practicing a skill so that in class you can do this kind of conversation. Because back in the day, I would give you beautiful notes in class so that you could go home and sit in there and think about your problem.
And make sure.
Doesn't live in that world anymore.
Yeah, with homework, make sure, like, you know, when you ask them, don't ask them if, don't ask them what your homework is. Because there's going to be homework.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah, what were you working on here? And if you did your work on a whiteboard, I know your teacher let you take a picture of it. Because they wouldn't have let you walk out of the room with nothing.
yeah, and ask to see their notes. See what
Wouldn't
they're
have
doing,
let you do that,
know?
for sure.
Definitely check your kids' notes and see what they're doing. And, you know, it helps you kind of get familiar with what they're doing in the classroom, too. So.
Is it all just book for 7th grade, or is it computer as well?
We don't do any assignments on the computers. We'll do handouts and we'll do stuff with the book. So that's pretty much all it is.
Yeah, it's fighting technology.
It's 6:35. We're going to take a 10-minute break until the start of the next session.
You're welcome. That was really fun.
Thank you guys so much.
There will not be another